Virgil's Aeneid takes place immediately after the events at the fall of Troy. Recall that Troy was only taken after the Greeks were able to gain entry into Troy by leaving a giant wooden horse, pretending it was a token, a votive for Athena for good luck on their voyage home. But of course, in fact, there are Greek soldiers hiding in it. Trojans were tricked into thinking that the Greeks had given up their 10-year siege of their city and were so overjoyed that they stole this quote-unquote prize, brought it into the city, thus releasing the Greeks inside their own city. Aeneas, who is a Trojan warrior, a prince of Troy, was only barely able to escape the slaughter and the mayhem, realizing that his city is about to fall. He grabs his father, he grabs his son, he grabs his wife, he grabs his prayer statues of the household gods, and he and a bunch of his followers escaped down to the docks. He sadly lost his wife in the mayhem, but he was able to save his blind father and his young son and his household gods. And a lot of people boarded the boats and sailed away, leaving the city in ruins and burning the Greeks to pillage it. The Aeneid is a 12-book or a 12-chapter epic that Vergil wrote very much in the same style as the Odyssey and the Iliad. In fact, the first part of the book mirrors the Odyssey. It's a sea voyage where they get completely lost. The second half of the Aeneid mirrors the Iliad, where they are fighting a war. Aeneas and his fathers had been at sea for many years. They're nearly at the end of their voyage when Juno steps in to prevent them from finally reaching land. Juno is an enemy of the Trojans. She has been their enemy since all the way back before the Trojan War. Juno speaks with Aeolus, the god of the winds, and asks him to cause a huge storm. He does. The winds are let loose from their cave and cause havoc, sending ships to the bottom of the sea. All but 7 of Aeneas's ships have been destroyed, and countless lives have been lost. Neptune notices this, and he gets very upset. He feels that he is the only one who is allowed to cause storms on the sea, so he sends the winds back to Aeolus with a warning never to do that again. They have overstepped their bounds. Aeneas and some of his followers wash ashore on the coast of Libya. Many of his followers have been lost, and they are completely depressed. So Aeneas, being the leader that he is, he reminds them of all these amazing things that they have done in the past, all these dangers they have faced, and tries to lift their spirits, hoping perhaps that some warmth and some food will help encourage them. He grabs some people and they go hunting. Venus appears to her son Aeneas and directs him towards the nearest town of Carthage. Carthage is a city that was founded by a woman. Her name is Queen Dido. She was originally a Phoenician. Her husband, Sychaeus, was murdered by Dido's brother back in Lebanon. And afraid that her brother is going to come for her as well, she escaped and sailed almost on to the other side of the Mediterranean and founded a new city of Carthage. Aeneas approaches her, and as he is standing in front of her, Venus drops this fog and appears before her. Dido is amazed, and she invites the Trojans to her palace. Venus is worried that Juno is going to cause more problems, that she will incite the Phoenicians, the Carthaginians, against her son. Venus sends Cupid. He pricks her with an arrow, and she falls in love with Aeneas. At dinner later, Aeneas tells his tale. Everyone is moved by the terrible story of the Trojan War from someone who actually lived it. Dido, who had been listening very intently, is falling more and more in love with this hero Aeneas. And Dido is at odds. She doesn't know what to do. She has these emotions, and she knows she has a responsibility to her country. They fall in love. They spend a good amount of time together. Time goes by, and Jupiter learns that of the affair between these two, and he sends Mercury to remind Aeneas that he's got a job to do. He has a destiny he needs to fulfill. Aeneas is very sad, but he has to obey the will of the gods. He doesn't know how he's going to tell Dido that he has to leave, so he tries to ready his ships in secret. She finds out and accuses him of stealing her honor. She's torn. She's torn between this love and this hatred. She loves him, but she can't abide by what he's doing and how he's just going to abandon her. But he has no choice. He is compelled by destiny, and he's compelled by the gods. Dido knows that she can't stop him, and so she orders her sister to create a pyre, a huge funeral pyre in the courtyard, piling up all the different bad memories, that all the different trinkets and tokens that Aeneas has ever given him, and intending to burn it all. She sees the ships departing, she can't take any more. She climbs on top of the pyre, takes a blade from the stack, and throws herself on the blade, killing herself. When the funeral pyre is set alight, Aeneas can look back from the ship to the city of Carthage and see the smoke rising. He can just barely make out the wailing of grief and sorrow coming from the city. He immediately knows what has happened, but he knows that regret can't change anything. We're all just playthings of the gods, after all. After setting sail, they reach Italy. Near Naples, Aeneas heads for a temple of Apollo, meets a priestess called Sibyl, who is a prophet of Apollo. She can see the future, and she warns him of troubles coming. She warns him that there's a war coming. She warns him that a warrior on par with Achilles is coming. She warns him that Juno's anger is not yet over. She tells him that he needs to go to the underworld to talk to his father Anchises. So she guides him into the underworld. In the underworld, he finds the shade of his father Anchises, and he finally explains everything about the destiny. He explains that it's not just their destiny to found a city, but it's their destiny to found the most important city in the world. Aeneas's journey and Aeneas's lineage don't just stop in Italy. One day, someone from his genealogy, from his line, will one day found Rome. One day, someone from his line will conquer the great lands, and one day, Rome will dominate the world. This is new information for Aeneas. He knew that it was important for him to found a new city, but he didn't realize that the city that he was about to found would lead to the most important city in the world. Finally understanding the significance of this journey, he returns to the ship. They finally land in the kingdom of Latium. King Latinus has a daughter, Lavinia, and Lavinia has been pursued by many suitors. The warrior named Turnus happens to be the most eligible, and all seems ready for Lavinia and Turnus to be wed. But Latinus is worried of the prophecy that his kingdom will fall. So he goes to an oracle for more information. And the oracle tells him that Lavinia, in order to skirt this prophecy, should marry a foreigner. Not Turnus, but a foreigner. Meanwhile, Aeneas has landed just outside of Latium, and he sends an envoy. He sends an ambassador to the king. He asks for some land so that they may found a new city, a city of their own, a city for the Trojan diaspora. Latinus is mindful of this prophecy, and he agrees. He even offers his daughter's hand in marriage. He knows that it is useless to fight fate, and so he embraces fate. Turnus becomes furious at losing Lavinia, furious at Aeneas, and furious at these new Trojans. He assembles an army. Small skirmishes break out, no big deal. King Latinus, doesn't want an all-out war, and he refuses to send his men in support of Turnus. Aeneas knows that his forces are weak and they won't be able to meet an army head-on. So in his sleep, the river guard Tiberius speaks to him and tells him there's an ally called the Arcadians. The king of the Arcadians is named King Evander. Evander welcomes the Trojans, tells them all about the importance of this land, tells them that Hercules once came to this land to save the people from a monster called Cacus. Tells them that even the god Saturn came to them and created himself the nation of Latium. Evander and his Arcadian allies muster an army of thousands. Evander even sends his son Pallas down to fight with Aeneas to learn the art of war from the hero Aeneas. As they're marching back to the Trojan camp, Juno sends a message to Turnus that Aeneas is away. Turnus, realizing that this is an opportunity, attacks the leaderless Trojan camp and sets fire to the Trojan ships. Under siege, the Trojans can't figure out a way to get word to Aeneas. Aeneas' son Ascanius, still fairly young at this point, but a leader in his own right, begins to rally the Trojans to double their efforts and to fight harder. He even opens the gates of their small little city and rushes out with a small raiding party to surprise the Latins. It works, and the tide of the war starts to turn. Turnus is barely able to escape this little skirmish. At the beginning of Book 10, Jupiter sees the war. He had totally expected the Trojans to settle this land peacefully. In fact, they had almost done that if it weren't for Juno getting involved. Jupiter says that from now on, the gods will stay out of it. Men's fate will rest in their own hands. I wonder how long that's going to last before the gods get back into it. Turnus and the Latins are sieging the Trojans' fort still. Even though Ascanius had made that small raiding party, they are still under siege. Aeneas and his new Arcadian allies are finally coming down from the Tiber, sailing down the Tiber. Turnus hears that they're coming and takes his army to confront them. The battle is long, and violent, and bloody on both sides. Evander's son Pallas is fighting fiercely. Turnus notices Pallas and challenges him in the middle of the battle. The fight is long, and Pallas' sword breaks on Turnus' shield. Turnus is wounded, but counters with his spear, kills Pallas. Turnus then strips the dead body for prizes, taking off this valuable belt and taking some of his other arms and armor. Aeneas hears what happens to Pallas. It was his job to protect Pallas, and he has failed it. He flies into a rage and starts looking around the battlefield, specifically for Turnus. Juno sees this battle is going very badly for the Latins. She sees that it is lost for them, and she begs her husband Jupiter to save Turnus. Jupiter agrees that Juno may be allowed to do this. It didn't last long for them to stay out of it, did it? Juno creates an Aeneas out of clouds, a phantom Aeneas near Turnus. Turnus sees this phantom and chases it onto a ship. And as he is on this ship, Juno cuts the mooring and the ship floats away. Turnus can't stop the ship, and he's already been wounded. He's too wounded to swim back to shore, so off the river he goes. With Turnus gone, with their leader gone, the war, or at least the battle, is over. The leaders on both sides ask for a 12-day truce to collect the dead from the battlefield and to give them proper burial. The Trojans, the Arcadians, and the Latins all agree to this. And Aeneas sends Pallas back to his father Evander with 1,000 men to escort the body. King Evander is completely crushed that his son was killed in battle. He doesn't blame Aeneas, however. He realizes that this is the danger of war, and that he accepted this danger when he sent his son. King Latinus brings a council together, and they recommend that the war should be decided once and for all with a one-on-one battle between Turnus and Aeneas. Just as this council was recommending this, however, a messenger bursts into the council chambers with a frantic message that the Trojans are marching on the city. Their 12 days is up. Outside of the city gates, the Trojan army is waiting. Turnus comes out and challenges Aeneas to a duel. Armies gather to watch the fight. Juno is worried that Turnus cannot win this, and sends his sister Juturna to look after Turnus, to look after her brother. She disguises herself as a soldier and hides among the ranks, and then she starts goading the Latins into breaking the treaty and to fight when the Trojans are off their guard. Someone from the Latin soldiers throws a spear into the Trojan crowd, and the fight begins again. Both sides go at it full on. Aeneas is wounded by an arrow and has to be taken off the battlefield. He's seen by a surgeon. Coming back from the position, Aeneas joins the battle. He notices that in all of this chaos, that the city walls have been left unguarded. He takes a small group and enters into the city, attacking. Citizens flee in panic. The queen sees the Trojans inside the city walls and hangs herself in despair. Turnus wants to end the suffering of his people. So again, he calls for a duel between Turnus and between himself and Aeneas. Aeneas hears this call and he accepts it. Turnus strikes Aeneas' shield so hard that his sword breaks, which sounds very similar to what happened with Pallas and Turnus. He runs away looking for a replacement sword. Juno is watching this duel with concern, but she's not doing anything to stop it. Her husband Jupiter asks him why she even bothers to watch it if she knows what the outcome is. Destiny, after all, cannot be avoided forever. So Juno finally agrees to set aside her differences with the Trojans on one condition: that after the Trojans win against the Latins, that they adopt the name, the language, and the customs of the Latins. Jupiter consents to this. Aeneas finally wounds Turnus with a spear, knocking him down. Turnus on the ground begs for his life. Aeneas is moved by this. Turnus, and he is just about to give him mercy when he looks and he sees that Turnus is wearing Pallas's belt. And it brings the shame and the anger of not being able to protect Pallas back into his mind, and filled with sadness and anger, he kills Turnus. And that's the end of the book. So what parallels do we see in the Odyssey, the Iliad, and the Aeneid? Well, obviously, if we just want to go superficial, there's the boat and then there's the war. But Vergil is trying to take the relationship between Aeneas and Pallas and compare it to the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus. When Patroclus died, Achilles was filled with anger. In fact, the Iliad isn't really about the Trojan War. It's about Achilles' anger and sadness and grief and wrath at not being able to protect the one person that he needed to protect. He started off selfishly removing himself from the battle because the king Agamemnon insulted him. This led to Patroclus taking the field himself, getting killed by Hector. It's not a great parallel because Aeneas and Pallas don't have the same relationship as Achilles and Patroclus. Um, Not even close, but we can see that Vergil is trying to draw some parallels here. I think that's about it. Bye.